Hello, friends. Welcome to Brass and Bougie. My name is Adrienne, and this is my gun diary where I share my journey exploring everything firearms. And so you get to follow along with me and learn as I learn, and I'll share all of the things I'm doing on my firearms journey. So, in this video, I am going to talk about the steps I went through to choose my first firearm. So when I jumped into getting my first firearm, I think I didn't really know how to begin. And what I've learned since then is it's kind of like buying a pair of shoes. Like, you have to decide, what are you going to wear it with? Is it for everyday use or is it for a special occasion? Are there certain accessories it needs to go with? Is there a brand that I want to have? And all of that before you even get to like your specific size. So there's a lot of things to consider. And then even like that, like once you get a selection, you still have to try them on. You still have to walk around in the store and see, do they already hurt before you get home? And then after you get home, walk around in them and break them in and see how it fits and decide if you're going to keep them or return them or not. So it's a very similar process to like getting a pair of shoes as it was for me buying my first firearm. And so I started out just going to gun stores and asking people questions, just telling them I was new and looking for information and, any guidance that they could offer. Now, I will say, use this one with a little bit of caution because let's say opinions are like assholes and everybody has one. So people have all kinds of advice they want to give you about what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing. And a lot of those people that told me what the right firearm was or what the wrong firearm was, I ended up discarding because like no one knows what's going to be right for you. And I just had to try things out and figure out what was the best fit for me. Some of them are based on, their ideas about gender and what fits for particular genders and all that kind of stuff. And so I just had to take it with a grain of salt, but I did get a lot of useful information along the way too. And so I'll talk about some of the things that I learned in those questions and then some of my own research that helped me make the decision about my firearms. And I made some notes to follow along just so I could cover everything that I wanted to talk about. So you'll see me following my notes. So the first thing to consider for me was like, what kind of action did I want? And there's a lot of different like fancy terms for it, but ultimately it boiled down to me for like, do you want a revolver or do you want a semi-automatic pistol? Because I was looking at getting a handgun. And so there's some things to consider about a revolver. Like, it is very simple to shoot. You point and fire. There's not a lot of, complexities around how it actually works. It's pretty easy to figure out whether or not it's loaded or not by just looking at it because you can kind of see in the cylinder there if there are bullets in the gun or not. I learned it's pretty accurate in terms of shooting. So because there's not a lot of moving parts in it, it pretty much shoots wherever you aim it, and there's not a lot of movement in the accuracy of where the ammunition lands. Some of the other considerations around a revolver is that they typically have a really small capacity. Like you're going to get 5, maybe 6 rounds in a revolver. It takes a little bit more time to reload because you have to open it up and put in the individual cartridges when you're loading a revolver. So that can take a little bit of time if you're in a situation and you've gone through your 6 rounds. So that's something to consider. And then another thing I learned was that it doesn't really do well, like if you are outdoors and let's say you drop it in the mud or the sand or whatever. Because it has a lot of spaces in it, it can get gunked up in those type of situations, and so doesn't necessarily work the best in those types of circumstances. For a semi-automatic pistol, one of the biggest pros for that is the higher capacity of rounds. So you can get more than 6 rounds. You can get up to, 17 rounds in some, 17, 18 rounds in some full size semi-automatic pistols. And they're a lot faster to reload. Like, because you have a magazine and all of the ammunition is already in the magazine, you pop it out, you pop it in, and you're ready to go. So if there's any type of jam or malfunction, or if you run out, it's pretty easy to put another magazine in and keep going. But another thing to consider is something I just said, which is it can jam. And so that is one thing to consider. There's a lot more moving parts with a semi-automatic pistol, so you have to accommodate for that. And they also take a little bit more time to learn how to operate because there's just more moving parts. You need to learn how to put in and out the magazine and release it. Not that it's hard, it's just more things than a revolver. So that was kind of the initial consideration. It's like, did I want a revolver or did I want a semi-automatic pistol? Another thing I needed to consider was about the safety. And so a safety is something that you can activate on a gun that will prevent it from firing unless the safety is turned off. And so this is a consideration for a lot of different people and a lot of different situations. There's no right or wrong answer. A lot of people who may have children around or have a lot of guests in and out of their home may feel more comfortable with a gun that has a safety on it. So if someone comes across it, there's less likely a chance of an accidental fire because there's a whole other step that people have to go through. Nothing is foolproof, but it is an added layer of security. And another consideration around the safety is if you're going to carry every day, how you're going to carry every day, where you're going to carry every day. You may want to have a safety option on your firearm. And so that's something else to consider. One thing to note, though, is it is an extra step that you have to take before the gun is ready to fire. So in a critical situation, it's one more step you have to go through. It is more safe when you don't want it to fire, but it's also an extra step when you do want to fire. And so everyone said to me, if you're going to get a gun with a safety, you always have to train with turning it on and off. It has to become an automatic action because you don't want to be fumbling around and pull it out and try and shoot and the safety's on and it doesn't fire, because those seconds make a difference when you're in a position where you need to use your firearm. So if you're going to choose one with a safety, make sure that you train always with turning it off and on as part of the movement so that you develop that muscle memory and your body gets used to it. Okay, so next is the caliber of the firearm. And the caliber is all about the size and the power of the ammunition. And there are some really common calibers of weapons that most people carry on a regular basis or use for self-protection. The .22 caliber is the smallest and lightest weight caliber firearm, and it's easy and it has a lower recoil and typically has a little bit lower price. So a lot of people go to this one because it has a lower recoil. It's a little bit easier to handle when you're starting out as a beginner. But the most common response I got is it's not the go-to recommendation for self-defense because it doesn't have a lot of stopping power for a threat that may be approaching. So then there's the .380, a little bit larger than the .22. It usually comes in about a pocket-sized gun. So it's a little bit larger than a .22, a little bit more power, but still not the same power as some of the other calibers. It also tends to have a little bit lower recoil, but one of the challenges with a .380 is the price of the ammunition can be a little bit higher, And when you're wanting to get something that you're going to practice with considerably, you want ammunition to be easily available and at a price that you can afford to get on a consistent basis. So it's a consideration to make if price is something that you're concerned with. There's the 38 special. It typically comes in a revolver. It's kind of a medium caliber. It has a pretty manageable recoil. Again, higher than the 22, higher than the 380. Usually pretty accurate, and still a decent amount of stopping power. The 9mm is probably the most common, and it's really right in that mid-range of power and recoil. So it's going to have a slightly higher recoil than, say, a 22 or a 380, but not as high as some of the others. Still quite manageable. This is usually a go-to recommendation for self-defense because it typically has enough power to stop an oncoming threat. And still is really manageable. The ammunition price is really affordable, probably one of the more affordable out of the group aside from the 22. And it's still a reasonable size for concealment if that's something that you're interested in doing. My nose is itching and I don't. I'm going to take a minute to scratch my nose. Okay. All right, 9mm, middle of the road. Value priced in terms of the ammunition, very easily accessible ammunition, and kind of a medium level of recoil. The 40 caliber is on the larger size, larger than a 9mm, so I'm kind of doing these in increasing order. It definitely has an advantage in terms of stopping power over some of the others, but it does have a more significant recoil. You're getting to a higher level of recoil with the 40 caliber. Still manageable. Lots of people still carry a 40 caliber. This used to be the go-to for law enforcement, and now a lot of people have gone to the 9mm. So either of those are good options for defense. You'll just want to try them out in comparison to the others. And then after the 40 caliber is the 45. It's usually the largest, the most stopping power. In terms of the size of the ammunition and the power of the ammunition. These tend to have a little bit lower capacity because the caliber of the ammunition is larger, and they tend to have larger grips. Same with the 40 caliber. They tend to have larger grips because the ammunition's a little bit larger. So in order for them to get to full capacity size, they'll have a larger grip. So when you're considering these, you'll want to try them all out and see which one fits you the best. Then after caliber, which is about the size of the ammunition, you're going to consider the size of the actual handgun itself. And there are full size, there are compact size, there are subcompact size, and then there's a micro compact size, which is kind of considered a pocket size gun. So the full size usually has about a 4.5-inch barrel. The grip fully fits in your hand with the magazine in the grip. And a lot of times a full size will have a double stack. And what that means is in the magazine, the ammunition is stacked next to each other. So it'll make the grip of the gun a little bit wider. And then for the compact size, that's usually about a 3.5 to a 4.5-inch barrel. The grip usually will fit in your hand with or without a magazine inside of it. And so you can try it out and see what feels most comfortable in your hand. The subcompact size is about a 3-inch to a 3.5-inch barrel. This is where your grip is going to start to get a little bit smaller. So with the subcompact size, some of them, you may find that your pinky actually doesn't fit on the grip of the gun without the magazine in it. But if you put the magazine in the gun, then sometimes your pinky will fit. And you can often get an extended magazine so that it gives you a little bit longer grip, even though the capacity of the gun may be a little bit smaller. And then with the micro compact, typically your pinky is not going to fit on there whether or not there's a magazine. These are really designed to be pretty small, to be carried in a pocket or something along those lines. They're typically less than about a 3-inch barrel. And so it's definitely a much smaller size. Very highly concealable. Subcompact is usually highly concealable. It's going to depend on your body size and your hand size. So body size is going to come into play if you plan on carrying day to day, and then how you plan on carrying, whether that's open or concealed, and where you want to put it. So that's going to be a variation, but a lot of it is going to depend on your hand size. So folks with smaller hands may want to get a smaller handgun, and folks with larger hands can choose across the spectrum. It doesn't mean that someone with smaller hands can't carry or shoot a larger gun. You really have to try it out and see what fits for you. And some of it is also choosing as a beginner versus choosing as a more experienced shooter. Because as you get more comfortable, you're probably going to explore different things, and you'll be open to trying different sizes, whether it's larger or smaller. So just another thing to consider. And then kind of a sister to the size is going to be the capacity. And the capacity is about how many rounds the gun can hold. And so I talked a little bit earlier about revolvers, and they tend to hold about 5 or 6. When you get into the semi-automatics, which are these sizes, then a subcompact usually holds about 6 to 10 cartridges. A compact usually holds about 10 to 15, and a full-size pistol usually holds somewhere between 15 and 19. There's going to be variations across brands and variations across models, but those are kind of some general rules of thumb that you can use to gauge that and help you make your decision about what handgun is going to be the best fit for you. So I've mentioned a couple of times, put it in your hand and try it out. And so after learning all of the different factors around guns, that's what I needed to do. Just put a bunch of them in my hand and try them out to see what size felt good in my hand, to see what the grip felt like. Could I get both my hands around it? Did it feel comfortable to me? What was the weight of the gun like? Could I easily manipulate the magazine and push the release? Could I reach where everything was on the handgun? Racking the slide on a semi-automatic pistol, like, was that easy enough for me to do? Some of them are stiffer than others. Some are made specifically to be easier to slide, and they'll have that in the name. So I just went to a bunch of gun shops and went to a bunch of gun ranges that allowed you to try out different pistols. And I just put stuff in my hand to see what it felt like and tried to operate some of the basic things. When you go to a gun shop, they're always going to verify that they're handing you an empty firearm. That's part of their safety protocols. So they'll let you do all of the movements. You can pull the trigger, you can rack the slide, you can hold it in your hand, you can release the magazine, you can do all those things and try it out and just see what feels good to you. That was really the first place for me to start. And then I kind of test drove a bunch of them and used them at the range. A bunch of the gun shops will have rentals available. I actually sought out some gun ranges that some of them put, what rentals they have available on their website. And so I went to see, okay, well, which one had the biggest variety that I could choose, so I could go back a bunch of times and try them out. A couple of the ranges actually let you pay one fee and swap them out as many times as you like. So I went to a couple of places like that to get the best bang for my buck. And they allowed me to pay the one fee and try. I tried probably 6, 8, 10 different firearms in those sessions just to put a few rounds in, shoot them off and see how they felt. What was the recoil like? What was the grip like? Because it's one thing to hold it in your hand. It's going to have a different weight once you actually load it up with ammunition. And then it's going to feel totally different once you shoot it. So I went through all of those things with a bunch of different guns just to see what they felt like and how I responded to them and what felt most natural to me. And then after all of that, I made my final choice. And so I'll tell you some of the factors that really led to my first firearm choice. So I chose to get, hold on, let me grab it. Okay, so I chose to get the Sig Sauer P365X macro. You'll see the magazine's empty. The slide is empty, so this gun is empty. I'm so excited and I love it. I still think it's the best choice I could have ever made. So I'm happy, very, very happy with it. And I've been having a good time getting to know her and playing with her at the range safely. But I'll tell you what had me to choose this as my first firearm. One, I knew I wanted to get a semi-automatic as opposed to a revolver. For one, because I really wanted the higher capacity. And that was a bigger factor for me. And I knew I wanted to get a 9mm because I was really happy with that middle of the road caliber that would give me some good stopping power for self-defense and also just a more manageable recoil. I tried some of the higher calibers and the recoil felt like a lot for me as a beginner. And so I wanted something that I felt like I could manage, that I felt like I could get a good grip on and control in my hands and shoot consistently so I could get more comfortable because I really wanted to be getting a lot of repetitions with my gun. Let's see. I also chose it because this gun in particular is considered a compact, so I can get, as you can see, I can get my pinky all the way on the gun without the magazine loaded, and it gives you a little bit of extension even with that. And this still has a higher capacity than most. This has a full-size capacity in a compact size gun, and it is unique. So this holds 17 in the magazine plus 1 in the chamber. That was a huge selling factor for me because I figure if the purpose of it is to be able to defend myself, even though I'm also using it for recreation, I wanted to get the best bang for my buck in terms of capacity. And so if I have an extra magazine as well, you know, I'm all set to go. I got 36 rounds ready to go. The grip feels good. The weight feels good. There is no safety on the firearm that I choose. There's an option to get one on this gun, but I did not. I decided that I don't have children in my home. I don't have a lot of guests in my home. I'm not at a place where I am concealed carrying on a regular basis. And so I didn't want to have the extra step before I was able to fire. For me, it was important to learn how to be safe with firearms, regardless of whether or not there's a safety. One of the most basic fundamental safety rules is always assume the gun is loaded. And so I always treat a gun like it's loaded. So I personally chose to go without an added safety feature. It does have some built-in safety features as well, like in the trigger and things like that, but it doesn't have an actual separate safety mechanism, and that was a personal choice for me. And then the other thing that was a factor in this choice for me is the built-in compensator on this gun. And so what that does is it helps make the recoil a little bit more manageable. Sometimes people will put an aftermarket compensator on a gun, and what that does is help with dispersing the gas that gets released when it fires so that it doesn't snap so much when you fire. And the very first time I shot this gun, I knew it was the one that I wanted. I had been through so many different brands, and a lot of people had recommended a lot of things, and I tried a lot of things, and some of them felt okay, and I was actually leaning in a completely different direction before I shot this gun. And I shot it at an expo that I went to. They had a range there and a ton of vendors, and I got to try it out, and it was the first time, and that was the day I made the decision about what I was buying. So those are the reasons that I chose my first gun, and chose what I chose. I'm still super happy about it. I'm excited about it, and I still love shooting it. I have so much fun. So that's it for me today. I hope there was something helpful in this video. You can continue to follow along on my journey and subscribe, and make sure you hit the bell icon if you'd like to continue to follow along and learn more. As I learn, I'm going to share. So there's just more information out there for everybody. I've always found it helpful to hear other people's experiences, so I'm sharing mine along with you. I appreciate that you took this time to sit with me today, to listen to me. I hope it's been useful to you. Take care, be well, and have fun. See you next time. Hey, if you like this content, please take a minute and hit the like button, drop me a comment, and share to let me know. Your responses really help my channel, and I appreciate you. If you'd like to see more, click the subscribe button and the notification bell so YouTube knows you really mean it.